What would you do if strangers showed up at your door, demanding to tear down the one thing keeping you free? In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where lawns were trimmed and mailboxes gleamed, retired veteran Henry Mason faced that very question. The sun was dipping low, casting golden rays over his modest red brick home, when he spotted the fake HOA enforcers, clipboards in hand, climbing over his wheelchair ramp like they owned it. They were there to tow it away, to strip him of his lifeline. But Henry, a man forged in the fires of war, wasn't about to let that happen. What he did next, smashing two of them into the pavement with the stock of his old rifle, would spark a firestorm that shook the neighborhood to its core. Henry had settled into this serene corner of the world after his military days, CRVYing the peace his CRVYC had earned him. His home, weathered but proud, stood as a testament to a life well lived. The wheelchair ramp, sturdy and unassuming, was its only alteration and necessity for Henry, whose arthritis and age had robbed him of easy steps. That ramp wasn't just wood and screws, it was his bridge to the world, a symbol of his hard-won independence. Neighbors loved Henry. They'd stop by his porch for chats about old war stories or the sweet scent of magnolias in the summer air. The neighborhood, with its tidy lawns and friendly waves, felt like a family, embracing Henry's ramp as a quiet nod to empathy and resilience. But that calm shattered when the so-called HOA enforcers arrived, unannounced and unwelcome. They weren't the usual community volunteers who'd settle disputes over coffee. No, these men in ill-fitting suits strutted through the streets, wielding clipboards like weapons and exuding cold authority. They nitpicked everything: a leaning fence post, a trash can left out too long, spreading unease like a chill wind. When their eyes landed on Henry's ramp, they branded it a violation, a blemish on their rigid VY shine of neighborhood perfection. Whispers of discontent rippled through the community. Neighbors, once content, now gathered over fences, their voices rising with worry. How could a ramp, so vital to Henry, be a problem? Henry sat at his kitchen table, the morning sun warming his hands as he sipped his coffee. The latest HOA notice, pinned to his door, burned in his mind: remove the ramp or face penalties. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, stark, threatening, and utterly devoid of compassion. Henry's military past had taught him to respect rules, but this felt different. This wasn't about community standards, it was about control, maybe even greed. Rumors swirled of hefty fines for trivial infractions, lawns deemed too wild, paint colors not approved. Henry's gut told him these enforcers were lining their pockets, not protecting the neighborhood. As days passed, Henry became a beacon for the community's frustration. Older residents, who'd watched the neighborhood grow over decades, turned to him for guidance. They trusted his steady judgment, his unshakable integrity. Young couples fretted over escalating fees with no clear basis. The neighborhood, once alive with laughter, now simmered with apprehension. Henry's resolve hardened. He wasn't just fighting for his ramp, he was standing up for everyone, every neighbor intimidated by the threat of fines, every home cloaked in fear. His anger, tempered by righteousness, fueled a quiet determination. True strength, he knew, lay not in force but in standing firm against wrong. The day of the confrontation dawned bright, the sun glinting off white picket fences. Henry sat on his porch, his cane by his side, watching the enforcers approach. They moved with arrogance, tools in hand, ready to dismantle his ramp. Their leader, a stocky man in a too-tight suit, hid behind sunglasses, his face a mask of false righteousness. Henry stood, leaning lightly on his cane, every inch the soldier he'd once been. Neighbors gathered, drawn by the tension, their whispers growing into shouts. "You can't do this!" one called, defiance in her voice. The crowd, young parents, elderly couples, professional, closed ranks, united by outrage. Henry raised a hand, his voice low but commanding. "This ramp isn't just a ramp. It's our right to live with dignity, free from oppression, dressed up as authority." His words struck like a match, igniting the crowd's spirit. The enforcers faltered, unnerved by the community's unity. Henry stepped forward, his gaze locked on the leader. There was no anger in his eyes, only a steely resolve that spoke louder than words. As the enforcers pressed forward, two of them lunged, eager to reclaim their dominance. In that moment, Henry acted. From his levying room, he'd retrieved the stock of his old rifle, a relic, not a weapon, but a symbol of his past. With the precision of a man who'd faced far greater threats, he swung the stock, redirecting their charge. The two men stumbled, crashing to the pavement with a sharp slap that echoed through the street. They lay there, dazed, their illusion of power shattered by an old man's fortitude. Henry stood tall, his breathing steady, looking down with pity and resolve. The remaining enforcers retreated, their confidence broken. Word of Henry's stand spread like wildfire. Emily, a single mother across the street, had watched it all unfold. Long harassed by fines and threats, she felt hope stir within her. She baked cookies and crossed the street to thank Henry, a small gesture that carried deep meaning. Soon, Henry's yard became a gathering place. Neighbors brought stories of their own fines for garden gnomes, fees for door colors, vague threats with no basis. Tom and Sarah, an elderly couple, spoke of absurd penalties for their front yard. Young families shared fears of escalating costs. Each story fueled a growing resolve. Robert, a retired police officer, took it further. Moved by Henry's defiance, he dug into the enforcers' legitimacy and uncovered a shocking truth. They were part of a scam targeting veteran communities, exploiting trust and bureaucratic gaps. Armed with EVY Denke, Robert and Henry rallied the neighborhood. Twilight block meetings buzzed with plans, flyers detailing the fraud, legal resources, and calls for justice. Homes sprouted signs, "We stand with Henry." The community boycotted fake HOA meetings, refused to pay bogus fines, and transformed fear into action. The local media caught wind of the story. Reporters flocked to Henry's home, drawn by a tale of heroism and justice. Henry spoke humbly, framing his stand as a fight for fairness. The attention forced real authorities to act. Unmarked cars rolled in, and the fake enforcers were led away, their sham exposed. Trials and public denouncements followed, unraveling a web of greed that had preyed on the community's trust. Henry's ramp, once a target, became a symbol of triumph. The neighborhood changed. Where fear once lingered, camaraderie flourished. Residents attended city council meetings, challenged unjust policies, and rebuilt their community association with transparency. Children played on Henry's porch, their parents waving with gratitude. Henry sat there one evening, the rifle stock by his side, the ramp steadfast before him. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. His granddaughter's laughter rang out, a reminder that his fight was for them all, for every family, every home, every right to live free. Henry took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs. The peace they'd fought for was theirs again, but it was more than that. It was a legacy of courage, of unity, of one man's stand that woke a community. The ramp stood not just for Henry's mobility but for the strength of a neighborhood that refused to bow. As darkness settled, Henry nodded to himself. The battle had been worth it. The quiet hum of suburban life, kids laughing, dogs barking, neighbors sharing casseroles, carried a new note: resilience. Henry wasn't a hero by choice, but by necessity. And in his stand, he'd shown them all what it meant to fight for home.